Hey guys, Nick Campanella here with Taylor Timepieces, and on today's episode, I did want to discuss something that I see a lot of people asking me, and that's essentially um, how important is box of papers in a watch? Is it needed? Do you not need it? Does it help with the sale? Does it hurt the sale? Things like that. And I think honestly, the answer is, in short, it depends. And we're going to go into a little detail about why I think it's important, um, and why in some cases I think you could go without it. So, for starters, I would say any modern piece, it's always very helpful to have box of papers. The box, not so much because you're not going to be wearing the box, but um, especially these days, scams and things like that are just becoming so much more widespread. I mean, you saw the other day Vucom had something where essentially people were creating AI versions and videos of him to sell those products and getting people to wire and send funds to that gentleman to receive basically nothing. Basically, AI has come to the point where people have uh, tried so hard to scam where it's becoming an important tool, and I think having that paperwork is very helpful. I also think having the paperwork is helpful in cases like if it's essentially most Rolexes. So if it's a modern Rolex, something like a Batman or a Batgirl, something like a root beer, I think that has a lot of value. I think in general, it's important to, um, have, even if it's not original papers, something that says, "Hey, this watch is authentic." Now, the caveat is, of course, if you trust the people that you're working with, uh, then 9 times out of 10, I would not be worried about it. So, if you're buying something for the first time, I think that most sellers should not have a problem if it's without box and papers to say, hey, can we open this up? Can we see it at a shop? Can you open it up for me? I think any seller who essentially has uh, some friction on doing that is someone that's should not be trusted. So, back to the idea of, does it need papers? It really depends on who you're working with. If it's somebody that you trust, then I would say buy the seller. And if he is somebody who uh, is available, on a regular basis, he makes himself out there. He gets himself out there. He makes himself known. I think that is something maybe you could go without if you needed the paperwork. Um, of course, I think for certain brands it doesn't always affect the value. I would say something like Rolex or AP. I would say anywhere from 10 to 20% is where that value lies as far as what I would expect at a discount if something didn't have box and papers. Something like an IWC, especially something that's older, maybe like an engineer or something like that. Um, I don't think necessarily papers would, or not having papers would affect the value. So if you're buying from somebody you trust, maybe you've done a lot of business with them, you know them well, I think that in that regard, um, it is something that I would be comfortable doing without. Also, if you are a collector and the person well, and maybe it's something for your personal collection, uh, unless you are a very big, uh, very neurotic when it comes to everything needs box of papers. Um, I think you can go without it. With that being said, where papers are helpful, I think is, like I said, things like Rolex and EP, all the major brands, Vacheron, those Holy Trinity brands that a lot of people go crazy for. I think that having those papers is helpful. And I also think where papers come in handy rather, are in situations where uh, maybe somebody purchased something and they didn't know that it was not authentic. I mean, the amount of trade-ins that we get here at Taylor Timepieces on a weekly basis, uh, they are not always super informed on whether or not a piece is genuine or not. So having that paperwork is really helpful. Now, something to look out for is that idea that you have, basically inauthentic paperwork, or people that sell these cards, or people that sell these, or swap these cards, or something that we talk a lot about in the industry is the idea of wash cards. So what a lot of these, more scrupulous dealers will do is wash a card with perhaps an older date and put a newer date, so that it could still be perceived to be under warranty. That, of course, is not very kosher. It's very frowned upon in the industry, but it's something that, unfortunately you do see, especially on, things like the Diamond District. We had a very trusted source of ours years ago now, I would say a year or two ago, where we found out in our networks that he would wash these cards, and we had to drop him as someone that we work with. And so I think that having those box of papers are always helpful. Of course, something that you really, I think, it does matter is something like a limited edition piece. If you guys are familiar with our friend Kramer the Watch Guy, if you want to check out his channel, he just did a very similar video like this. And one thing that I noticed is he does have that gorgeous Omega limited edition Japan piece, and it's a beautiful piece, and I'm sure that he's got a lot of eyes on that watch, and I'm sure that watch will sell. But without the box and papers, what I have found is that a lot of these clients only really want something with that provenance, and to have a limited edition piece without everything that makes it a limited edition does very, very much affect the value, at least in my opinion. Now, if you're just going to wear it as a daily piece, then wonderful, and I hope you enjoy it. But if you are a collector and you're looking into these limited edition pieces, it's always good to have those box of papers. Now, a box is always much easier to come by than paperwork. Box could be had for a couple $100s, and in cases of Patek, maybe a couple $1,000s for some of the more expensive pieces. So boxes are difficult to replace, but when it comes to paperwork, that is very difficult to replace. In some cases, that they don't even allow that. You go to AP or you go to Omega, and they can get you something like archive papers. Omega, I think it's about $800. AP, you're looking at a service. They actually, before February of 2022, you could just go in and pay, I think, $700 or $800 for archives. Now you need to give it a full service. So if that gives you a kind of sense about the importance of the papers, and the fact that a lot of these companies have said, hey, we used to give out these replacement papers for free or for minimal cost. Now we've reached the point where if you want a replacement of not even these papers but a copy of the archives, you have to get this piece service, and that can be upwards of $2,000 or $3,000. And so, yeah, I mean, listen, if you have a Speedy Reduce that you spent maybe $2,000, $2,500 on, having no box of papers, as long as everything's authentic, you should be fine. But if you're looking for something wonderful that is a collector's item, I would always say get the papers. It's always better to have papers than to not have papers, and that's why we try the best we can at Taylor Timepieces to sell things that are, of course, up to snuff when it comes to what we're trying to stock, and what we're trying to sell. And if it is something that is without the papers, that the discount is in accordance to the condition and the completeness of the watch. If that's something you want to discuss further, I'd be happy to do so. Again, this is Nick Campanella with Taylor Timepieces, and I think the final verdict, like I said, is for me. The papers are important, but there are certain cases where you can do without the papers, and I don't think it'll affect the value of the watch very much. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great day.